Okay. We're gonna start with introductions here, and if a few people stumble in, then that's perfectly fine, and we'll get caught up. And if not, this is being recorded, so if you're watching on the recording, hi. Um, Thanks for hopping on. My name is Jordan Lamb. I am 19 years old, and I am currently a freshman at Kansas State University, dual majoring in ag communications and animal science. I have been judging for just shy of 10 years, I believe, through 4-H, FFA, Junior Hereford stuff, just about everything that you could imagine.
My name is Morgan Furlis. I am 19 years old and also currently a freshman at Kansas State University. I am majoring in animal science with a minor in agricultural communications. I have also been judging for about 10 years through 4-H, FFA, the Hereford Associations, pretty much any way you can livestock judge, I've done it.
If you guys would love to introduce yourselves, kind of tell us who you are. We'll pull up a slide right here, share our screen with you guys with the information, but whoever wants to go is welcome to go, just so that we kind of know everyone's background in livestock judging and who you are. So have at it.
I'm Amari Edge. I'm from Fenimore, Wisconsin. I am at elementary school. I'm in second grade, and I'm also a Harvard sweetheart in the Hereford Association. I've been judging for a year.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I can go next. I'm Hannah Olson. I'm 19. I'm from Arkdale, Wisconsin. I go to school at South Dakota State. I've been judging since I was 11, and I enjoy judging because it's a good way to meet other kids with similar interests.
I'm Brogan Keltner. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Pearl City, Illinois, and I've been judging for some while, and I just would hope to learn some stuff from this.
Perfect. Awesome. I believe.
This is BJ Jones here. Junior Hereford advisor, been judging for a long time, not very well. Trying to learn some new things. Brady will be joining us too. I've got him finishing up chores so I could jump on.
Perfect. All right, did we get everyone? Okay, then we will go ahead and get started.
Also, if you guys have questions at any point, just stop, speak up. I think we can see if you raise your hand on here too, like through Zoom. So feel free to ask questions during and don't save them all towards the end. So today we'll be going over a few things, kind of all different levels of experience will be able to use this. So we're going to learn about basic contest setup, how to set up your notebook, how to take notes, how to just evaluate the classes during a contest. We'll also be touching a little bit on reasons, as that's a new addition to the contest for junior nationals this year, just for seniors. And it's just good to know if you want to participate in any other livestock judging contests, and just to grow your communication skills as well. How to judge. You need to know how to judge in order to participate in livestock judging contests. So that's a good place to start. And real life application, why these skills are important, not just for participating in contests, but multiple other reasons.
So let's start with contest setup. So the NJHA contest and 4-H and FFA contest look a little bit different. So in terms of the contest at NJHA, you'll have 4 classes of 4, 1 class of steers, 1 class of bulls, and then 2 classes of heifers. There's usually 2 question classes. You have 12 minutes of class, which seems like a very long time. But once we start talking to you guys about all the things you need to look for, it goes by pretty quickly. And then for this year, reasons for seniors as well. And then 4-H and FFA contests look a little different. So they're 8 to 10 classes, 4 in all the various species. Then there's reasons, questions, and you also have 12 minutes. And so for 4-H and FFA, even though they're all various species, the things we'll touch on with how to judge cattle can also apply to sheep, goats, and swine as well in some aspects. And then the other big thing we want to talk about are scantrons. You will use scantrons at both the NJHE contest and within 4-H and FFA. And it is very important to know how to fill out your scantron, because if you miss bubble or double bubble, you will get a 0 on that class, which we both can tell you is a terrible
Not
experience
fun.
to have. So we really wanted to hit this home. So I believe you guys should be able to see the mouse. So down here is where you will put your first and last name. You just follow it down, bubble in the letter that corresponds with it. The stuff that's X'd out up here at NJHE, they will fill that in for you. And if it is not filled in this upper corner, do not fill it in, because anything that is bubbled that shouldn't be can throw off the Scantron reader. And then in terms of classes, so you'll see up here that it has it says placing classes. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are all going to be the numbers of the classes that you do. And then you will just follow down to find the placings of how you want to place a class, and you will bubble right where that is. So you can kind of see that the 1 matches up all the way down, and there's a 1 at the bottom too, just to kind of make sure you're in the right spot. And then down here is where you will fill in questions. Sometimes it's labeled exam. They will let you know, though, that that is where questions will go. And then it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1 and 2 can also be used for true or false questions, with 1 being true and 2 being false. And if at any point you are ever in a contest and you are confused about your Scantron, do not be afraid to ask someone, because I promise you are probably not the only person that is confused, and it is better to ask than to bubble it wrong. So, does anyone have any questions about Scantrons?
I know that especially at junior nationals, they'll have junior board members, interns, all of those important people around to help you out. If you have questions about anything, they're very willing to help you, because they don't want you to make a mistake, and just based off of your Scantron.
Yes.
One question on the contest at junior nationals. Do you know if there'll just be one class of reasons, or if there'll be multiple?
It is 1 class of reasons, I believe, for seniors.
That's my understanding from
Yes.
reading the rule sheet, is it's just 1.
And it technically falls under like a separate contest, but you have to do the judging contest to be able to participate in the reasons contest. But it is not required to do reasons at JNHE. Any other questions so far? Okay, we'll keep moving.
So next we're going to dive into reasons, questions, note-taking, all of those different things. So first we're going to talk about note-taking. So I would say arguably that's one of the most important things when you step into a judging contest, practice, anything like that, because you are going to judge multiple classes throughout the day. And I would love to say that I have the ability to memorize everything that I've seen, but unfortunately I don't. So when I walk up to a class, I will have a notebook. It can be this kind of notebook that I have. It can be note cards. It can be Post-it notes,
like a
steno notebook, pieces of paper, kind of just whatever you have. I know junior nationals tends to get a little hectic and you might forget something like that. So just seeing what's available. I prefer to use the steno notebook because that's what's easiest for me, and probably the most common as well in the judging world, but whatever's available to you. And I will write the class name and the class number at the top of that piece of paper, so then I can look back and know what I'm talking about and what I'm looking at. So if it was class 1 fall heifer calves, I would write that at the top of my piece of paper, so then I can immediately see right at the very top that that's there. When I first walk up to a class, I look at physical stuff. So halters, ear tag colors, if one is a dark cherry red heifer, if there's a whiter featured heifer, goggle eye, red-necked heifer, any of those are the immediate things that I will first jot down in my notebook. because you can talk about them during reasons or they're asked during questions as well. Making sure that it's organized for you, whatever way works best for you. How I do my notes is probably different than how Morgan does her notes and how you guys do your notes. And they'll change over time as you find how you prefer to do it. Yeah?
Is there like gonna be multiple kind of breeds, or is there gonna be like one kind of breed?
At junior nationals, it'll just be Herefords. But at other judging contests, it can be just about anything that you could imagine.
Thanks.
Back to notes, I always start with ID stuff and then go from there. Physical characteristics that you notice, highlighting the good things and the bad things, not just all good things about animals, because that would be pretty hard to look back and kind of knock an animal for anything. Organized in whatever way you want it. If it's just writing 1, 2, 3, 4 on your piece of paper, if it's setting it up in more of a complex way where you can write reasons on that sheet, just finding whatever works best for you. And that's why I suggest playing around with it before and then just writing so then it's easy for you. Why note taking is so important is because you'll have to look back for it for reasons and questions. When you're judging, you cannot look at the class when you're giving reasons or answering questions. So it's important for us to take detailed notes, but not too long because you don't want to spend your whole time writing in your notebook. So essentially, reasons are no more than 2 minutes where you have to explain your placings and why you placed it that certain way to an official or a judge. So you would say, I like this class of Hereford heifers 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the way that I was taught initially is you start by listing 3 good things about an animal. And then, so I would say I put 1 over 2 because she's deeper bodied, structurally sound, and more feminine through her front 1/3. And then you can move on to your middle pair and do the same thing. And you can add in some beef as you get more experience and get better with just memorizing and knowing how to word things. But then at the bottom, when you're describing your last place animal, they're obviously last for a reason. And just because they're last doesn't mean that they're not good, but you do have to kind of knock them down for something to explain. So my judging coach would always describe to me, when you want to round out your reasons, you do 3 strikes and you're out. So you try to shoot to 2 to 3 things that were not nearly as good about the animal, or 3 things that they did kind of worse than any other animal in that class. But don't diss on the animal because you never know if that owner is the one that you're giving reasons to. So you got to be cautious, but also be telling the truth and be able to correctly describe that animal. We can send out an example of reasons or a video of someone giving a set of reasons. I'm sure one of us, we can actually probably go over one of the classes and write up a set and record it and then send it out to you guys who attended if that's something that you guys would be interested in.
Yeah.
Does anyone have you?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple other things. So Jordan talked about like memorizing. The biggest thing to do to make it easier on yourself is to start as simple as you can, just knowing which animal is which color, or if you're doing a class of market animals and one of them's a heifer, like that's something you need to know. So then you can tie back to the other like smaller details, like, oh, the dark cherry red heifer was also the deep bodied heifer, and having those things to kind of like correlate with. And the other thing is, don't be so focused on using fancy terms that you describe an animal incorrectly. Being basic and accurate is more important than being complex and inaccurate.
I would second what Morgan just said. Does anyone have questions on reasons? I know I kind of spiraled there, and it's sometimes a lot to take in initially. So when I was first learning how to give a set of reasons, what I would do is either listen at shows, look them up online. There's plenty of sets out there that you can find on YouTube or Google, or just ask someone that's older than me if because they would often have more experience, so they're able to help you kind of find terms or a flow to your set of reasons that works best for you. My set of reasons will sound much different than Morgan's, and Morgan's more different than your guys's. And it's just all about individuality. And if they all sounded the same, it'd be kind of boring to go to a show because everyone would be the same.
One question for you both. Do you still have to, or should you give I grant that even though I placed them 1, 2, 3, 4, granted 2 is better than 1 in this particular regard? Do they still do that? 3 reasons why you put them first, but then 1 reason why maybe 2 excels over 1.
Yeah, I always do a grant. That's something that I kind of incorporated once I got the basic hang of the flow. But I mean, if you guys are already learning at this point in junior nationals isn't until July, I would see no issue with you guys being able to incorporate it. And I think that sets you one step further apart from people if you include that.
Yeah, and we can draw up how both of us do our reasons and notes too, and send that out to you guys as well. We just ran out of time when doing this and didn't quite get that done. But I know for me that was super helpful in understanding how to like write a set so that we can outline it to where it shows you where to put a grant, how many good things to talk about, and stuff like that. Amari, did you have a question?
Yeah. What? A number. What? Like if you know.
Oh, you mean for the reasons?
Yeah.
Well, honey, you won't have to do this.
Never mind.
Okay.
Okay.
And any other questions at this point?
Awesome. So I'll briefly cover questions. So at junior nationals, it depends on the class and kind of the officials and how they're feeling that day. But I would say it rotates between 5 to 10 questions per class, and there's typically only 2 question classes.
2 question classes, yes.
Yes. So that's at most 20 questions that you're going to be asked. And at junior nationals, they tend to be what was the goggled-eyed heifer, what bull had the biggest scrotal circumference, what bull got around sounder, freer moving, what steer appears to be the heavier finished, fatter steer, things like that. A little bit all over the place. I know they've asked questions about halters, ear tags, what bull is horned, if there's all polled bulls and there's only one horned bull. But I would say that they're all easy-ish questions if you're paying attention and taking good notes throughout the contest and being just aware and noticing things like that.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely like the big physical differences is what they're going to focus on. And then like if there's a heifer or steer that is obviously smaller than the rest, they're probably going to pick that one out and ask you a question regarding that as well. So just finding the big things is really important to getting started. And from there, you can kind of dive deeper into like the smaller nitty gritty things.
Does anyone have any questions about questions?
Okay, then we will move on. And so we talked about all these things you guys should know, and now we're going to kind of dive deeper into those. So when you're looking at market animals and breeding animals, you're going to look at the same things, but the order of importance of them is going to vary a little bit. So first, we're going to start with market animals. So first and foremost, you're going to want muscle. These animals are going to go to the rail. They're going to be slaughtered. This is the product that you're eating. So you're going to want something that has muscle because muscle is meat, muscle is product. So along with that, you're going to want an animal that has volume and mass to it. And then in market animals, you're going to want to focus on structure a little bit. That's kind of more of a like when things get down to it, you bring out structure. And then just overall eye appeal and overall balance of how the animal is put together and just that everything kind of fits together in a nice, neat package. So I know that's a lot to understand. So we're gonna pull up a class, and we're gonna have you guys watch it through one time where you can see all four animals. And then if you just want to write down kind of like a preliminary placing or how you think you might place it, and then me and Jordan will go through and kind of talk about the differences of them and then what the actual official placing is for them.
Do you guys know how to write down, like when we mean write down a placing, do you guys know what we mean?
Why don't you
If
just go over that? Yep.
Um, so when I say write down a placing, or Morgan says write down a placing, that is going to be numbering the animals first, second, third, and fourth. So if I walk up to this class, just a random number, and I say I want one first, two second, three third, and four fourth, I will place the class one, two, three, four. If I wanted the class, if I wanted two second, three, or sorry, excuse me, two first, three second, one third, and four fourth, I would say that I place the class 2, 3, 1, 4. Does that make sense? Or you can just write down first, second, third, fourth, whatever is easiest for your guys's flow and how you do things.
If anyone does not understand, speak now. Okay, then we'll get started.
And we can play it again if you guys think it went too fast or you're not able to focus on it. Just we'll reconvene after this video. Okay. Do you guys have a play? We'll play it again if that works for everyone, or do you guys have placings?
Okay, we'll play it again.
All right, we're coming in on the last 10 seconds. So you guys don't have a placing, try to get a little bit of one, or at least try to figure out who you have first or last. All righty.
Just wait.
I placed winners for.
I think they were being explained first.
Oh, you guys go first. Go first. Go first.
Okay. No, I think they can still see our screen this way.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so did everyone get a placing down?
Do you
Or is
want
it-
us to send our placings in the chat or what?
If you guys want to share them, you can. If not, we can just discuss and you
Yeah.
guys can follow along. If you don't feel comfortable sending them, there's definitely no need to. We'll just discuss.
Yeah, we'll just discuss. I mean, that way we can, like, you kind of know what you saw before we talked about them, and then if you want to change it afterwards, you can kind of see how things would be a little different.
So I would say that this is a pretty comparable class to what you would probably see at junior nationals, considering it is during the summer. So steers tend to not really be at their end point then, because county fairs, state fairs, majors are a little bit later than July. But there's certainly, it can vary year to year. So we thought that this class was kind of a 2-pair class. So that means that that sorted itself in half. We had a top pair and a bottom pair. So there were 2 that fit very well together and 2 pairs that fit very well together. 2 that gravitated more to the top and 2 that went towards the bottom. Anyone can shout it out. Would you have any idea what the 2 pairs would be, or? We can put it in big screen.
Yeah. So does anyone have 2 that they think need to be in the top, 2 that have to be first and second?
Go ahead.
I think 4 and 3 should be the top.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what we found too. Certainly a horse apiece, either way that you prefer. Everyone has their own different tastes in animals, so just because what I agree with doesn't mean that that's what you guys are going to agree with, and that's why there's multiple judges and multiple officials, and if everyone looked at them the same, it would be no point in going to shows.
Yeah.
So I think so that separates 3 and 4 and then 1 and 2. For us, 3 and 4 kind of gravitated towards the top, because they were just the heavier muscled, easier appealing ones for us. We decided to put 3 first. I think, let me go to his individual video. For us, he just does the most things correct. It's a bit harder to poke a hole in him. Is he perfect by any means? No, not at all. No animal is going to be perfect, but looking at him here, he's nice and level through his top. He's got some depth of body and plenty of shape here through his rear. And it's still pretty neat and cleaned up through his front, despite being a heavier weight steer. When you get behind him, you can still see this shape here. This is his belly here. Obviously, we don't want his belly way bigger than his rear end, but I'd say he puts it together well. And this is kind of our ideal shape as we're looking behind us here. We want shape in his rear here, because that's where money and meat comes from. But we also need this because if not, he'd be too skinny. He steps down on a pretty wide base, so he's pretty straight and square. Let's see this. When I was looking at this, I wrote down that he was the deep dark red steer. When you get him compared to the rest of his fellow classmates, he's just the darkest one, and I felt that that was pretty important to put into my notes. He's also nice and wide down his top. During junior nationals, we won't be able to get this close to them, but you can kind of still see this from a distance because this will be meat and muscle up here, and that's important. And his shoulders aren't poking out too big, so he's nice and sound there. And from this angle, he's still got plenty of shape. When you get him out on the move, they're walking a little slow here, but he still tracks really well, which means that his back leg meets his front leg for the most part. His back doesn't get all wonky. He just looks nice and comfortable. He carries his head nice up, which means he's good shouldered, and still has all that shape and just does a lot of things right for us. One thing about market steers, so the way that they, well, I guess market animals in general, the way that they distribute fat is top to bottom and front to rear. So this steer is not fat by any means, but when you are looking for signs of fat in an animal, the fatter they are, the more fat will be like down below and then back here in their rear. So none of these steers in this class are fat, so we won't really be able to see it. But when you look at them, you can see pone fat if they're a bit fatter, which is right here on their tail heads. And then another easy place to look for it, so this would be where you would find pone fat. If you can see my mouse circling, it would just look like big balls of fat, if that makes sense. Let me go to this front shot here real quick. And another easy place to see it is here in their brisket. If it's more filled out than not, that means that they're a bit fatter, a bit closer to their end point. But this one here in the back has a little bit more loose skin. So he's probably not as fat or as filled out and close to his end point as this 3 steer. So we put him first just because he does the most things right. He's still sound, which is important because ultimately, if they can't load up onto the trailer as a steer, then we have a lot of problems. Or if they can't get to the feed trough, then we have problems. After that, we placed 4 second. Amari said that they need to be in a pair, and I would not disagree one bit. This one's still got that same look, depth of body, nice and level through his top. I'm a little concerned about his hip here, but that's being picky on a pretty cool, bit more haired up steer. But
I would say one of the important things too is that when you're looking at market steers, you don't see it as much with Herefords because, as most of us probably know, Herefords are terrible to grow hair on. But you need to determine what is hair and what is actual muscle because hair can be deceiving. And so with this steer being a little more haired up, he seems like he has a little more in his rear and maybe through his center portion of his body. But as we take a couple different angles of him and as Jordan walks through those other angles, you'll be able to see that that's more so hair. And so then it's kind of becomes a little more clear that 3 needs to sort to the top because he has more of that true muscle.
As you get behind him, he's pretty wide too. This is 3 standing right beside him. So you can see that they're pretty similar as far as muscle when you get behind them and just kind of their width. He likes to get a little bit underneath himself, but that could just be the way that he's standing at that given moment. Not as wide topped as number 3, so that's somewhere where you could pick on him a little bit, but still plenty wide topped and good through his shoulders here and wide hipped as well. Still has plenty of shape from this 3/4 angle, so pretty adequate in his muscle and width because you can see his front width. He's kind of giving this girl a hard time on the halter, which can happen. So sometimes you do have to look past those issues and kind of just judge the animal and not on their behavior. But when he does get moving, he's still nice and sound and tracks very well. You can see his hip kind of go up a little bit, but that's being nitpicky. I would just say that he fits very well with 3. And I think that's one of those things that you have to know when you're judging. You wouldn't want to place animals that look similar on complete opposite ends of the class. That would be kind of contradicting yourself. So when you get these 3 and 4 side by side, they look a lot more similar than if I were to put 3 and 1 next to each other or 4 and 1. So just keeping pairs and similarities together. So that is our top half. And then so we have 3 first, 4 second, and then we put 2 in third. And I think the bottom could go either way based off of your personal preferences, and the flip of a coin, honestly.
Yes.
This one, not nearly as showy, not as freaky fronted, but still very practical. Plenty of muscle back here, not as much. He struggles a bit more in his top line, so you can see he kind of gets a little bit weaker right here. And we prefer him to be kind of straighter and stronger through there. As Morgan said, reading through hair, so this one doesn't have as much as the one prior to him, so it's keeping that important. When you get behind him, however, though, not nearly as much shape as the 2 that we looked at previously. So this is important because ultimately at the end of the day, they're going to be market animals and we're going to eat them. But when you compare him side by side to this 3 steer over here, just not nearly as much shape, and shape is important when it comes to muscle animals and not as wide based as we would like to see. He's fairly decent topped, but you do have to make sure that you read into what is belly and what is top. But definitely not an area where I would say that he struggles by any means. Here you can kind of see where his top line is an issue, where there's this big dip. And he gets underneath himself here in his back too. And then here from the front, he's still got a little bit to fill out here, which is important too to remember based off the time of the year. Some judges or officials are looking more for market ready animals. And I would say that this one certainly needs more days on feed in order to probably harvest the ideal carcass or carcass that would bring us the most dollar value. Certainly not a bad steer by any means, just kind of got outpowered by 3 and 4 so far. So our 4 and final steer is this number 1. Today for us, he just lacked the power. He needs just more shape back here. When you look at him, he's pretty flat and there's not a ton of curve, I guess is an easy way to look at it. He's just a bit plainer, I would say. He doesn't really jump out at you and wow you, but he's not bad by any means. He's very practical, easy to feed. He looks a bit bigger framed, so he's going to take a bit more time to feed out. Here again, with the being a little bit flatter in his rear, not as much shape, you can really see here it's just a flat line compared to sticking out a little bit. And here how his legs go in, kind of at an angle, we do not want that. We want them to be straight out, so they're nice and square at the ground. I would say that this one gets underneath himself and hawks in just a little bit. Pretty wide tops, but nothing extremely impressive. And here you can see he's kind of just pretty one shape from his rear, up to about his shoulder. Again, just one that probably needs a bit more days on feed or different feeding routine to get him a bit more shape. He's still really fresh and clean throughout his front end, which is something that you can admire and you could grant him, that he does well. He's definitely not fat by any means, which is a good thing. So let me go to the 4 view. So in the end, we placed 3 4, 2, 1. So 3 was first, 4 was second, 2 was third, and 1 was fourth. I think the big key takeaways in this are realizing that there's 2 pairs in this class, and that's something that you have to notice pretty early on, just based off of muscle, and then overall look as well. And then just noticing those differences and noticing what is needed and the importance of things in market animals. So we said that muscle was an importance, so we cannot place one first if he's the lightest muscled one in this class, unfortunately. So we need to prioritize muscle, volume, and mass, because if they don't have volume and mass, there's nowhere to put that muscle. Or if we do put muscle in that, it's just not going to be as much product as it would a bigger, heavier steer, I guess. And then they all still are very eye appealing and easy to look at, and I'm sure I would take any of them in my show barn or take them to a show any day, but that's just the way the class landed.
Are there any questions? I know that was a lot. So
yes.
We are more than willing to break them down a little farther if you guys would like, or go over something again. Just any questions, shoot them out.
Like, do you want a level neck or do you want a curved neck?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Do you want a level neck or
a level or a curved neck? I think was her.
I mean, like back. I mean back.
A back? So
Yeah.
you want a level top. So I would say out of all of these, this 3 steer probably does it best. I think he's pretty straight here. It's just nice and level. There's no holes, there's no dips, drops, any of that. I would say the 2 that I would pick on the most in this class about their top are these 2. This one has a big dip right here in the middle where you could probably put water on his neck and water on his hip, and they would run down to this spot right here. And this one here isn't bad by any means, but we just like to see him kind of carry it a little bit straighter like this one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? I know that I was a little long-winded there. Okay.
All right. Then if not, we will move on to heifers. So in terms of breeding animals, so we're going to look at like essentially the same things, but their order of importance is a little different. So first and foremost with breeding animals is structure. If you have a really nice heifer cow, but she can't get to water or walk around the pasture to graze, she's not going to be very productive in your herd. So structure is something that is incredibly important within breeding animals. Secondly, volume and mass. You need somewhere for that baby to grow in her. You need her to be able to fill out and look nice. Overall eye appeal and balance, just again, putting all the right pieces together in a nice, neat package. And then the other thing we wanted to hit on was muscle. We typically think of muscle as being just something in market animals, but muscle is also something that is important in breeding animals. It just doesn't hold as much of an importance.
Ultimately, the breeding animals are the ones that are making our market animals. Mm-hmm. So if we breed a flat, light muscled heifer to a flat, light muscled bull, we're probably not going to have very good market animals and not going to have a lot of product to bring to market.
Yes. So we'll kind of go look at that again with another class. Thank you. And so we'll play this video twice through for you guys, just like we did last time. Just kind of write down kind of your placing, how you feel about it, and then we'll go through and talk about them.
All right. All right, we will play it again for a second time. So try and get some placings within the next minute and a half or so.
Okay. So, is there anyone who didn't have time to get a placing wrote down? Okay, then we thought that this class kind of had someone that a heifer that should easily find their way to the top and a heifer that should easily find their way to the bottom and that you could flip a coin in the middle. So does anyone want to shoot out who they think could have won, who should have been bottom, anything like that?
I think one should be the top one, and I think four. I mean, no, three as the bottom.
Okay. All right. So let's go through and talk about them. So let's start. Yeah, we'll start. We'll start with the number 4 heifer. So just kind of looking at this heifer, things that we talked about before, just looking at her from the side, she has a ton of mass. She has a lot of depth of body. She's pretty level through her top. As you look at her front end, she's not necessarily as neat as one might like her to be, but she's definitely not fat or kind of gross up front in any regards. She's very, so as you set her in emotion, she moves very, very well. Even though she is kind of fighting the halter a little bit, once he finally gets her going, she moves very well. She tracks well. She keeps her top level as she moves. She doesn't really roach up in her back in any way. Now, as we look at her from behind, this is kind of like a 180 flip from what we did with steers. In steers, we talked a lot about wanting them to be big and massive through their rear end. And while we don't necessarily want a heifer that is super like narrow or anything, what that mass looks like is going to be a little different. So as we look at this heifer, she still has some mass through her rear end. She's still fairly wide through her hips. And as you look at her from the rear, you can see that she does have a ton of depth of body again from that rear view. So these are all really good things about her that we like to see. Then as you kind of look at her from this like 3/4 angle, just looking at her from this angle, this heifer puts a ton of good things together from her hip back here all the way through her shoulder. That structure we talked about is very, very good. This heifer kind of just puts it all together. Like when you're looking for a heifer that you want to be good structured, this should be the heifer that you picture because she does it all right. And she still carries, like I said, a lot of mass with her, which can sometimes be a hard thing to do once heifers get a little bigger, sometimes get a little more mass to them. They can either just get fat or it can be hard for them to carry that weight with them. But for this heifer, she carries it all really well. And then as we look at her from the front, so when you look at her from this angle, she isn't, like I said, necessarily the most feminine, but still she's fairly clean through her front 1/3. I mean, really, she just keeps it all together, but it's not all that neat. But I mean, also for a heifer at her stage of the game and where she is, it's to be expected that she's going to be a little more waisty through this part of her, as she's kind of filling out, because like we talked about, top to bottom, front to rear, so she's going to get a little more waisty up here before it kind of fills out with the rest of her and balances her up real nice. And then again, as we look at her from this angle, the one thing I forgot to touch on, I'll just go back to maybe.
It doesn't tell you.
Oh. Just gonna go back here. Or did they walk her first? Sorry, technical difficulties.
What do you mean?
This. So as we look at her from here, the one thing I forgot to touch on is that she's also very square based. So like we talked about in the steers, you don't really want their feet to kind of go under them at an angle or outward from them. She keeps everything very not narrow, very straight and in the right package to have her feet solid under her so that when she is moving around, she can do it as well as she does. And so then we'll go ahead and talk about the 3 heifer. So I'll be the first one to admit that when I looked at this heifer at first, I did not like her one bit, and I thought about putting her on the bottom. But that just kind of goes to show that first impressions aren't always everything, because as I studied this heifer farther, she does put a lot of good things together. So at first glance, we talked about in steers that we want them level topped. As you look at her, she definitely is not the most level topped heifer in this class, but still what we have to remember is that these heifers are kind of at the awkward stage of their growth, at that awkward point in their life. And so what she is going to grow up to be is a really big framed, really massive female that will make a really nice brood calf. And so as we study her, she's still got some mass through her center portion of her body. She's clean through her front 1/3. When you put her into motion, I don't necessarily love the way that she moves. She kind of roaches up here in her hip. But apart from that, she moves very well with her shoulders set into her right. She tracks very well. As we look at her from the back, she's a little narrower base than I would have liked when we compare her back to that 4 heifer. But still, when you look at her just on her own, she is still square base. She does put her feet right underneath her. She's very wide through her hips, so her hips are going to be from right here to right over here, and that's something we do kind of want to be a little bigger and larger, so that way when she has a calf, she's able to push it right on out and hopefully have no difficulties. Let's see. The other thing, so we look at her here, we see kind of the same things. You know, she needs to fill out a little more, but she's still got the capacity to be a pretty massive female, clean through her front 1/3, just puts a lot of good things together, but just not necessarily in as neat of a package as that 4 female did. So moving on, we're going to talk about the 2 heifer. So this heifer, she can be a little deceiving to look at because of all of the white on her flank. It makes it a little hard to see where her true flank is, where her true belly is, and to not really look at her as super high flanked. When you put her into motion, she moves very, very well. Again, she's wanting to fight the halter a little bit, but beyond that, she does move well. As we talked about before, her front end is a little fatter than we would like. When you look at her from the back, this is a very massive female. She's gonna make one heck of a cow. But like we talked about in steers right here and right here, you can kind of see the start of those fat pones that we talked about earlier. And so that's not always necessarily a great sign in females because fat heifers are much, much harder to breed. So even though we do want mass and volume to her, there's a difference between being massive and just being fat. And this heifer is starting to approach that just fat range. But still, she puts a lot of good things together. Square base, really big hipped. She's got some mass through her center portion of her body. If you look at her from this angle, her hips not super great, but still she looks fairly decent. And then as we look at her from the front, she's a little fatter fronted than we would like, but she's not over conditioned by any means. She's just kind of starting to approach on that end. So this would be a heifer that we would definitely want to put on a diet to keep her in that condition range that we like to see. So rounding out, we're going to talk about this one female. So first glance, she's a little higher in her flank. She's got more of a higher set to her tail head. She's really kind of waisty through this through her front 1/3. Yeah. And as you look at her rear leg, she's very straight. She doesn't necessarily have that curve that we like to see. And you can see that as we set her into motion. She doesn't necessarily bend her knees like the other females we've been watching walk. So that's a sign of an animal that's going to be poorer structured than what we would want. You can also kind of see it in her front shoulder too. You can kind of see her whole shoulder move when she was walking. That's not something we really like either. As we look at her from the rear, you again can see how straight she is, just her whole leg. There isn't really that curvature that we saw in those other animals. She's very narrow through her rear. She has those fat pones that are a little more prominent. This heifer is fatter than the two heifer that we just talked about. And that's not something we want to see. We want, again, a heifer that is clean and fresh and feminine. It also looks like she's either bred or she might have some bloat going on, but some things are not looking right either as you study her from the rear and look at her center portion of body. So you can see pretty much the same things from this angle. Those fat pones are a little more prominent from this angle too, to see those and kind of get her a better idea of what those are. And then from her front, you can just kind of see how narrow she is altogether, especially when you look at her front feet. She's on a very narrow base. And so that's kind of what was affecting her through her rear too, when we talked about that narrow base. So overall, when me and Jordan looked at them, we thought that the heifer that you need to find at the top was the 4 female. She's just the combination female. She puts the most good things together. We really, really like her. From there, we thought you could kind of flip a coin between the 3 and the 2 heifer. They do a lot of the same things a little differently in a little different package, but a lot of the same things. In the end, we thought 3 had a few more good pieces, put a few more good things together than 2. And then we rounded out the class with that 1 female. She's just a little wastier, not really at the point in her life where she should be as over conditioned as she is. She just doesn't look as neat as this 4 female or as really any of the other females in this class. So in the end, we had 4 in first, 3 in second, 2 in third, and 1 in fourth. I kind of went rapid fire through that. So do you guys have any questions? Okay.
I'll stop sharing.
Then, that's really all that me and Jordan have for you guys.
Do you guys have any questions right off the bat? I know that was a lot to take in, and it will be recorded and sent out. So if you didn't quite get it all or you want to take notes on anything, it'll be recorded for you guys to look back on, or don't, whatever floats your boat.
Yes. And then when that link is sent out with the recording, we will also send Kim or BJ, whoever's sending out the email, a PDF of what different reasons our questions note taking can look like. So you guys have that as well as a reference for kind of getting started or even revising the way that you take notes or write down reasons.
Do we have a website or other materials we recommend for continued learning? The website that we were just on is livestockjudging.com. That's what we used for the longest time in 4-H when we kind of struggled to find operations to go to in practice. And I think it's very realistic, and not just all show heifers or anything like that. So that's what I would suggest. I know that there's a premium version and a not premium version, but you can certainly get a lot out of the non-premium version.
I would say the other good one is judgingpro.com, and both of the websites we just mentioned have within the videos that we showed you guys, there's also another video or a written portion that gives you like the reasons. And so those kind of break it down the same way that me and Jordan did, or those officials who a little more experienced than me and Jordan might have seen things a little differently. And so you can see different aspects and ways to look at those.
I know sometimes SureChamp posts things like that. Can the Junior Hereford Association purchase a subscription to one of those judging sites? I think that would be something that we'd probably have to decide as a board.
Yes.
But I'll write that down.
And it is definitely something we can bring up and talk about. So that way you guys have that as a resource too.
As I was saying, I think SureChamp sometimes has some, or you can look up SureChamp livestock judging classes. I believe those ones are just the pictures. So it's a little bit harder to see them on the move, or just YouTube and things like that. Or just there's plenty of jackpots happening, kind of sitting and watching. That's how I got experience with different species as someone who grew up solely with cattle. So just asking too, if you have questions that you don't feel comfortable asking right now, reaching out to us, other people that have experience.
Are there any other questions? Okay, if not, then that is all that we have for you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. What was that?
What's the most important thing about judging?
I think just understanding the basics, and then building on those basics. So I think for me personally, it's learning how to read structure, because I would say that that's most important across all things. But just learning how to evaluate cattle and kind of stay up to know about breeds and different species.
I would kind of echo what Jordan said. Learning what good and bad structure is. I would say knowing your basics is the most important thing. A lot of times we get caught up in wanting to say fancy things so we sound smarter. But the basics are so important. And so I would say if you know those, you are on a great track to be a great livestock evaluator in all species. All right, then if there are no other questions, thank you guys again so much for joining us, and we hope you guys learned a little something from us tonight.